A lot of people don't understand the difference between martial arts, combatives, and self-defense. And sometimes these things can overlap. I think Kelly McCann said it best when he said, martial arts is something that you do with somebody, and combatives are something you train to do to somebody. Self-defense, on the other hand, is a legal term by which a use of force is judged. If you are training in something that is being labeled self-defense, there has to be focused on what happens before the event and what happens after the event. By this I mean you should be aware of elements of awareness, avoidance, de-escalation, as well as common ways that criminals set up attacks, assaults, etc. You need to understand the nature of violence in your culture. You need to understand the legalities of using force. And you need to know how to explain your actions as a reasonable person in a reasonable way. If things like legal consequences of actions are not discussed in your class, you are not training self-defense. You are either training martial arts or combatives. If you practice combatives, you should have a good understanding of self-defense. And if you practice self-defense, combative should be your go-to when it comes to the use of force. Martial arts is more for sport and self-improvement. Some martial arts can cross over into the combatives arena, but those martial arts are very rare. The most important thing about combatives are that they are tactics driven. Things like being first. By that I mean strike preemptively, be the first one to hit. And if you're gonna hit, be ruthless. Keep the pressure on. Be violent. Strike to injure, strike to cause shock, strike to disable your opponent. Both self-defense and combatives are goal-oriented. Self-defense, though, the goal is to get to safety. In combatives, pure combatives, the goal is to overcome the enemy. By using combatives with self-defense to follow the self-defense mandate of finding safety, of getting to safety, plus if we have a self-defense mindset, we will always try to avoid, de-escalate, escape, evade, and just do everything we can to not use violence. But if violence is forced upon us, because we understand self-defense law, we will be reasonable in our actions. Even though we have the capacity to be ruthless, and we reserve that capacity for situations where it is warranted, we will scale our use of force because we understand how to scale our use of force. We have to be careful when it comes to this, because if a high level of force is warranted and we hold back, we could be the victim of a crime, the victim of an assault, rather than the survivor. Or if we use too much force, we can become the criminal. We can become the person who is doing the assault. So we have to have ironclad discipline when it comes to combatives and self-defense. If we're in the army, if we're in a war, we can use force without any fail-safes holding us back. However, because we live in a civilized society, we need to temper our actions to the situation. However, under pressure, under real adrenaline, we can still make a mistake, no matter how well trained we are. And if you do, you have to be able to explain why you did it and why it was reasonable with the way you perceived the situation. It is a very slippery slope. So part of your training has to be a focus on adaptability. Part of your training has to be a focus on being able to switch off violence and move to safety when safety becomes available in the situation, unless I have to stay behind and allow somebody else to take that escape, or if I have to protect somebody, or if I can't let this person go because I know they're going to harm somebody else. However, these are just examples, and every situation is going to be different. But part of our training must be to consider all sorts of different situations. That helps us develop the adaptability to change on the fly, to stop our attack when it's time to stop our attack, to push our attack when it's time to push our attack, to use potentially lethal force when it's time to use potentially lethal force. There is so much to prepare for, and we cannot be fully prepared. All we can do is our best to make sure we train hard, we train often, and we question our training. We are human, and we will never be perfect, but we will be judged as if we could be. Because of this, we cannot be lazy when it comes to understanding use of force laws in our country and culture. We cannot be lazy when it comes to understanding the physiological and psychological effects of extremely high stress. This is what it means to be someone who trains both self-defense and combatives. This is just scratching the surface. But if you're interested in this stuff, we do train it Thursday nights at the gym. And if you want to get details on this kind of training, I also have a Patreon where I give lessons on different aspects of martial arts, self-defense, and combatives. However, a lot of my focus is on the combative use of edged weapons. I love all these disciplines, and I love sharing them with other people. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this kind of content, please don't forget to subscribe, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you for staying until the end of the video.